thank you for your Dhamma talk. It's a habit of mine to go walking while listening to podcasts. I've listened to all of yours and all of our Ajahn Samados, etc., etc. The other day I was listening to a Namarabati podcast. I think it was a guest Ajahn. But one thing that he said, which confused me, and I was wondering if you could help clarify. He said that the Buddha was talking about anatta, self and non-self. He said the Buddha, referred to all conditioned things as not self, but he didn't ever say there was no self. I think that's a fair verbatim quote. If there's a self, what was the self that he was referring to in that statement?
Yeah, I think it's just differentiating between, like you say, there's all conditions are not self, but he didn't say there is a self or a not self. He's just saying conditions are not self. We use this as a reflection. It's like a tool to help understand our experience. You apply this reflection to all conditions, sankharas, all formations. We're learning about this body and mind and seeing how they arise due to causes and conditions, rather than being a self, a fixed entity. But there were some questions that the Buddha just didn't really get into, perhaps because they were unanswerable through normal discussion, and so on, and because they perhaps just brought up far too much argumentative energy in those days, I don't know. But he would tend to steer away from answering questions like, what is the self? What is there if there's no self? But as far as the things we do have, this body and mind, or the 5 khandhas, well, you can apply this teaching, this reflection to that. So, is it a self? You can ask the question of your body, your feelings, thought formations, perceptions, sense consciousness. You can ask the question, is it a self? And it doesn't meet the criteria for self. Any of the 5 khandhas, we have to say, well, they don't exist on their own, they don't last, they arise in dependence on other things, therefore they're not existing by themselves or from their own, we say from their own side, or their own, they're not their own existing entity. So it's really teaching on not self is really a way to investigate your experience rather than just answer the question, what is the self? Maybe by investigating the 5 khandhas, you get to a point where you see the true nature of things through experience. But at the moment, we can only philosophize, can't we? We can only guess, we can only discuss it, and that's not the same as actually practicing and realizing it for ourselves. So you maybe just keep going with the investigation of your own 5 khandhas and use it, as I said, like a tool. Can I find anything in there that is permanent, lasting entity, or that I can call a self? And just use it like that for the moment until maybe your wisdom, your understanding goes a bit further.
Thank you. Sadhu Rampur.
Sadhu Lumpur, we have a few questions in the chat box. The first one is from Shervin. Lumpur, what is the difference between sampajana and panya?
they're like two close relatives. Sampajanya is translated as clear comprehension, clear awareness, all-round knowing, and it really is part of the wisdom faculty, panya, but it's very closely linked with sati, mindfulness. Mindfulness is translated as recollection, recollecting something in the present moment. But sati and sampajanya work together, and sampajanya is knowing what you're doing, why, what the purpose is, and what you're doing, whether the thing that you're doing is suitable, like what the results of what you're doing are going to be, thinking about the goal that you're going towards, the consequences of your actions. So we call it all-round knowing. So it's not simply knowing like mindfulness, which may be just knowing the breath, but it's knowing the quality of the breath, whether the breath is going in or out, what the purpose of what you're doing is for, why are you doing it, it's the bigger picture in that moment. So it really is part of wisdom, and it merges into wisdom over time through practice. Sati and sampajanya are like these qualities that bring wisdom along through practice. As sati and sampajanya are practiced well, then wisdom starts to arise, and wisdom is clear seeing, clear knowing of the way things are, and particularly the effect of wisdom or understanding arising is it takes suffering out of your experience. So knowing, as we were saying just now, knowing these five khandhas, this body and mind, as impermanent, as things that arise due to causes and conditions, rather than it being a solid self that you identify with as me, mine, myself. Wisdom knows, these are causes and conditions. The physical body arises due to causes and conditions, feelings, these are coming up through causes and conditions, mental formations too. Wisdom knows that, so wisdom is helping to clear away delusion. And sampajanya is like the beginning of wisdom. One of the attributes of sampajanya is non-delusion. So it's, you're knowing what you're doing at a certain moment and why. Ajahn Chah said a simple reflection is at any moment in your day, if you want to establish mindfulness and clear comprehension, or sati sampajanya, just pause and say, what am I doing right now? And then answer that question. And that is the establishing of mindfulness and clear comprehension. So if you're meditating, say, what am I doing now? I'm watching the breath. That's the aim of this activity, is to become mindful of the breathing. So if my mind is wandering away thinking about going on holiday to some sunny spot and lying on the beach and what I'm going to do, it's not with the breath. You've lost your sati sampajanya. So when you regain sati sampajanya, it's like, this is not the time to be indulging in thoughts about my summer holiday somewhere. It's back to the breath in order to strengthen my mindfulness. So you answer the question, right now I'm practicing mindfulness of breathing, say. But it could be driving your car. You're driving your car and again your mind wanders away thinking about something in the future, planning, scheming, imagining, or caught up in some memory of something and it's lost. So you've lost your mindfulness and clear comprehension in that moment. So you pause as you're driving. You ask yourself, what am I doing now? Where's my mind now? I'm driving. And you bring your mind back to the task of driving. So you re-establish sati and sampajanya. So we're doing this all the time through our day. And you'll notice when you have good sati sampajanya, there's certain qualities that come with that. It brings a sense of clarity, awareness, peace to the mind, sense of well-being. Even if you're in a stressful situation, if you have sati sampajanya, your mind is in a wholesome state, it's in a good state, so then you can deal with that stress better.
Sadhu Lumpur. The next question is from Hu Mai. Dear Lumpur, can I ask how do we develop strong samadhi?
Practice. Like anything, samadhi is the continuous presence of mindfulness and clear comprehension. That's what practicing mindfulness and clear comprehension leads to states of samadhi. And samadhi means the gathering together, the unification of mind. So distraction, which is the opposite of samadhi, leads to your mind being diffuse, doesn't it? Your mind is, we say, it's running all over the place, thinking this, thinking that. We say the monkey mind. It's going all over the place, or else it's falling asleep, which again is not unification of the mind, it's dullness and darkness. So we practice mindfulness to bring up continuity of mindfulness or sustained mindfulness, and then the factors of samadhi start to emerge from that. So applying the mind to an object, say the breath, sustaining it on the breath. As you do that, the mind gladdens, so you experience joy, and you get this feeling of contentment, happiness, because the mind becomes unified, steady, it's inwardly happy, which is good. You know, it's wholesome, it's good, it's bright, it's energizing. It's the opposite of sleepiness, and it's the opposite of distraction. And ultimately, the mind gathers together in what we call ekaggata, one-pointedness. Whether that one-pointedness is just for a few moments or for hours, that's the goal of cultivating samadhi. And then you can use that state of unification of mind, where what we call the 5 hindrances have disappeared, to contemplate, to observe experience. And when we say contemplate, observe, if the 5 hindrances have disappeared, doesn't mean to say you have to think a lot about your experience, but you're just observing and knowing experience as impermanent, and you're not identifying with your experience as self, me, mine, myself. So you can see anatta at work. You're saying, oh, this feeling arises, this sense contact feeling arises, then it passes away. And you're observing from this place of detached awareness, where there's a separation between the knower and the thing that you know. And so that's why seeing impermanent suffering, not self, is possible. So samadhi has a purpose, and the purpose is to develop wisdom, insight.
Sadhu Lumpur. Follow-up question. And what consider a good qualities of attending samadhi?
A good quality of attending samadhi. Not sure I fully understand the phrase, but as I just mentioned, samadhi means the continuous presence of good qualities, wholesome dhammas. Because when you bring your mind to samadhi, focusing on a wholesome object over and over again, you could say there's no room for an unwholesome object to slip in then. Or if it does slip in, it hardly bothers you, because you quickly let go of it, because you have strong mindfulness and the factors of samadhi are there to replace the unwholesome qualities that are always slipping into our thinking. Ajahn Chah used this wonderful simile of the chicken in its cage. So a chicken is in a cage because it needs to be protected from the outside world and also protected from itself, because chickens, if you leave them to themselves, they just go wandering everywhere and then they meet with danger, or they get lost, or they get attacked. So you put a chicken in a cage, but the cage is big enough for it to walk around in. You can put food and water in there. The chicken is happy, can move around, but it's safe. So he said Samadhi is like that. Once you've established Samadhi, then your mind can move around a little bit, meaning it can observe and contemplate experience, but without danger. So a thought arises, you know that thought, but you're not getting lost or caught up in it. A feeling arises, painful feeling, pleasant feeling arises, but you watch it and learn from it rather than getting lost in it and caught up in it. So Samadhi takes the danger out of your experience and allows you to see the true nature of experience as impermanent, as not self. But of course, Samadhi, especially in the beginning of the practice, it's impermanent itself. It's another thing that's impermanent, so it can fade. So you have to keep practicing it. Make your mind strong, firm, continuous, so that it doesn't fade, so that there's no danger for your mind. And you just have to keep doing it. It's a very frustrating, tiring process, but don't give up. Just keep doing it, and you'll get better and better.
Sadhu Lumpo, the third question. Dear Lumpo, is it right to consider Samadhi is the work of concentrating, while vipassana considers as the work of contemplating?
You could say that. So we say samatha gammatana, vipassana gammatana. So the basis of work is slightly different, but actually, as Ajahn Chah used to say, they're both practiced in the one mind in the same place. And they're kind of like two aspects of the same thing, or two sides of the same thing. So you can't really practice vipassana or observe, contemplate without samadhi. And as you're practicing samadhi, you naturally develop some insight. So they really do support each other and develop together. But strictly speaking, you could say samatha is the development of states of samadhi. So you usually have one object, the breath, or the body, or any of the 40 meditation objects, and you may develop appana samadhi, jhana. Vipassana is directly cultivating insight into the three characteristics of existence to develop the wisdom that leads you to let go of craving, clinging, and attachment, so that you're free from suffering. But they depend on each other. And you'll notice when you are contemplating the arising and ceasing of your experience, you're observing thoughts and feelings come and go, sensations in your body arise, pass away, that as samadhi fades, mindfulness weakens, samadhi weakens, you can't do it anymore. It becomes what we call vipassana thinking. So you have true vipassana, which is relying on mindfulness and samadhi, and then vipassana thinking, which is like thinking about vipassana, which is not necessarily all bad, but it's just not yet true vipassana, seeing things in the light of the three characteristics. It's just thinking about it. You say, oh, this is impermanent, my body is impermanent, and we can all think like that, and that can be quite fruitful in the beginning of our practice. But thinking about your body as being impermanent, for example, is not the same as seeing it or knowing it as impermanent. That has to take place from this place of samadhi and detached awareness, where you really can observe these three characteristics very clearly from moment to moment in your experience.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question is from WM. May I ask, please, how to tell which one is my teacher or master in real world, is there any teacher could appear in the dream to guide us in the real world?
Well, in the history of Buddhism, that's definitely happened. People have had dreams or even visions in their meditation where they've seen a teacher and taken that teacher up later. But to be honest, a lot of people have got it wrong as well. Because over the years you hear people's experience and they tell you, oh, I had this dream and I saw this monk and it was this monk, and then later that monk disrobes or something goes wrong and you realize maybe the dream wasn't so prophetic or profound as they thought. So be a little bit cautious with, believing dreams or jumping to conclusions about dreams or feelings you have. But I'm not saying it's totally inappropriate. It can work. And the Buddha said, use the qualities of Sanghanusati that we recite every day. Supatipano, Ujupatipano, Nyayapatipano, Samijipatipano. That's why we recite them every day. You're getting used to observing in yourself and then in others these qualities. And so a good teacher will be grounded in Vinaya. If they're a lay teacher, they'll be grounded in the 5 precepts or maybe the 8 precepts. If they're a monastic teacher, they'll be grounded in the Patimokkha Sila. That's your starting point, the Sila, the morality and the discipline, the renunciation. And then the Buddha said, get to know them over time. You have to see them and know them over time so that you can trust them. Some teachers are very amazing and you feel you can trust them first time. Ajahn Chah, Ajahn Mahabor, some of these teachers you meet, you really feel impressed straight away. But that doesn't mean to say they're your teacher. Sometimes there's a great monk or nun or person who is a very skilled and good teacher, but they may not become your teacher, because obviously there's other factors involved, like where they live and where you live and your karma, whether you're really connected to them, whether you click with them. Because you can meet a good teacher but still not click with them yet. There's a number of factors here, but if they have good sila, good discipline, what they say makes sense and they're not teaching you or telling you to do anything immoral or inappropriate or wrong, deluded. If they're teaching you the right things, the good things, and you get to know them over time, you feel you can trust them, then that person sort of in an organic, easy way becomes your teacher, perhaps. Often we do have intuitions. So you have an intuition, you meet someone, you say, oh, this seems like a good teacher for me. But then over time you prove whether that intuition was correct. Don't give it 100% backing yet. You give it 99% backing. Ajahn Chah said, you meet an arahant, it's 99% sure they're an arahant. It's 99% yes, this is an arahant, this is my teacher, I'm going to follow this arahant. But keep 1% of uncertainty available in your mind so you don't get caught out. Because some people get caught out and they believe someone is this enlightened teacher and then later they find they do the wrong thing, or this person fades from the Dhamma, or their practice collapses, and then people can become very disappointed and caught out by their own belief in that person. So if you find a teacher, have 99% there in your mind, yeah, this is a good teacher, I'm going to follow them, believe them, okay, but keep a little space available just in case. And that applies to yourself as well. Maybe you think yourself you know best, but don't believe yourself 100%. It's 99%. Keep a little space open in case you've got it wrong. Because if we're going to learn all the way to Nibbana, you've got to accept you're going to make a few mistakes, errors of judgment, delusions, wrong thoughts. 99% of what you see and understand may be correct, but there'll be a little space there for learning, growing, deeper knowledge that may come through experience and time.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question is from Sikita. Lumpo, may I ask what is the meaning of threefold bliss?
In the sharing of merit, we wish them the threefold bliss. It was good rebirth to start with. If someone hasn't reached Nibbana, you want them to be reborn in a good place, a blissful rebirth. Whether that means rebirth in the present moment in a blissful state of mind, a wholesome state of mind, or in the more traditional way, when they die, you want them to be reborn in a good destination. So we have Kama Sukhati realm, the sensual realm, which we're in right now, but you'll notice in the sensual realm there's a mixture. There's humans, which is a good realm to be born in, but there's also animals, which is not so good, and then there's ghosts and hell realms and not so good. So you don't want them born in a unhappy, woeful state, in a ghost realm or hell realm. You want them to be reborn in a good realm, so human realm or Devaloka, which is also still part of the Sukhati realm, so heaven realm, or Brahma realm. So there's Rupa Brahmas, the fine material sphere, based on the 4 Rupa jhanas. People maybe attain them and they're reborn in the fine material sphere, or the Arupa Brahmas. People attain the very refined states of Samadhi, the Arupa jhanas, and are reborn in those realms. So if someone's going to be reborn and you're dedicating merit to them, that's what you want, either a human, heaven, or Brahma realm. But of course the highest bliss, the best bliss is Nibbana, and that's what we want for ourselves, for others. So we also wish them to attain Nibbana, the end of suffering.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question is from Nirosha. Dear Ajahn, is it possible one to understand insight arose if they haven't heard about it before?
Can you say that again?
All right. Dear Ajahn, is it possible one to understand insight arose if they haven't heard about it before?
Well, insight probably can arise in small ways for anyone in this world, I'd say. Just realizing that you've gone the wrong way in life, or you've done something very foolish or evil. Even if you haven't heard the Buddha's teachings, you may have your own innate wisdom from the past, or you may know someone who's not Buddhist and they point something out to you and you get some clear insight arising. But really, what that phrase is referring to from the Dhammacakka Sutta, insight arose. True insight has to come through, first of all, hearing the Dhamma from an Arya Pugala, from the Buddha, or a well-practiced person, and then internalizing it, and from one's own development of wise reflection, seeing the Dhamma internally. These 2 factors, the external Dhamma that we hear, we learn, and then the internal reflection, are the cause for true insight to arise. And that has to be in conjunction, practicing or developing the Noble Eightfold Path. So the Buddha always said, if one hasn't practiced the Noble Eightfold Path or perfected that, completed that, then you might say true insight into the Four Noble Truths won't arise yet. But that doesn't mean to say that people in the world who haven't heard Buddhist teachings can't have wisdom and understand many things. They can, but maybe just not the full insight into the Four Noble Truths and the path, the fruit, and Nibbana. They may not have experienced that yet.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question is from WM. When people ask something about my past, I suddenly feel the sadness or upset feelings arising. Is this from my heart or from heart? Is that to indicate I have not cleared this particular fair? What should I do when this type of things happen, such as observe my mind flow or leave it and go on?
Yeah, just know it. We've all made mistakes in the past. We've had some painful, unpleasant experiences in the past. Yeah, everyone has that. Some more than others. Some have made more mistakes than others. Some have done worse things than others. But we've all got that because when we're born into the world, we're not enlightened. So we have some delusions and we make mistakes and we hurt ourselves, we hurt others. So when you think of the past, sometimes it hurts. The painful memories, guilty feelings, painful feelings, uncomfortable feelings. Just know them. And the more mindful you are, the more you'll know, well, this is just the karma, the result of whatever it is that you've done. You remember it and there's a feeling of, it's not good. But as you practice more, cultivate this path more, sila, samadhi, panya, the pain of past memories is going to diminish because you're developing and cultivating something much better. You may still be able to remember things you've said and done, and you know that they were not good, but you no longer suffer with them. Those painful feelings have faded, they've gone, because you're now cultivating something much better. Your mind is in a better place. The factors of the path are there all the time. The further you go with your practice, then the past doesn't bother you. So like we know with Angulimala, the monk who had previously murdered people, terrible things he'd done, but meeting the Buddha, practicing, he completely went beyond that. So there's no more suffering, no more guilt, suffering based on his past unskillful actions. But he still had to deal with people's dislike of him, and he still could remember what he had done, but he no longer suffered with it because the mind has gone beyond it. So we can go beyond everything. But until we've got there, we have to be patient with our own past karma, and we have to know why. Oh, there's this terrible feeling I feel when I remember 10 years ago I killed something, or I stole something, or I really hurt somebody's feelings. You may have that memory, and little by little the pain of it will fade as you practice vipassana, cultivate the path, cultivate other skillful qualities to the point where it's just a memory. That's just all it is, it's just a memory. So you have to keep working at it, keep practicing.
Sadhu Lumpo. There are clarification. So he's asking from the same person, is this from my heart or from...
You have to speak up, I can't actually hear you.
Right, okay. There's clarification that is this from my heart or from my mind? This feeling that's coming, that's rising? Is it from my heart or from my mind?
Well, heart and mind are often used interchangeably, aren't they? Spiritual heart is often translated, in Thai we translate as jai. In Pali we use citta. So citta is there, isn't it? The center of your emotional and awareness experience is there, really. I think most people will notice that when you meditate. So whether you call it heart or mind, it's the same thing. It's that which knows. So memory arises and it will trigger an emotional reaction. So you remember something you did that was stupid or hurtful, and you get a mental ouch. And you may even get a physical pain, and people get that, don't they? They have a bad memory and they get tension there. It's originating in the mind, but it's expressed in the body, because body and mind are linked because of attachment and this sense of self-identity. But for the Arya Pugala or the Arahant, that's empty, and they no longer experience that attachment or identification. So they have the memory, which is a mental thing, it's part of the mental khandhas, but it's no longer triggering any particular emotional suffering. So the painful feeling will not arise anymore. But we haven't got there yet, so we remember the mistake, the bad thing that happened, and we feel pain. Maybe physical pain, certainly some mental pain. That's arising in the citta, that which knows.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question from the same person. What relationships between samadhi and empty mind or emptiness?
There's emptiness and there's emptiness. I mean, true emptiness is nibbana, sunyata. It's one of the characteristics of nibbana. It's empty, empty of suffering, empty of self, empty of attachment. But until we've reached nibbana, we can still taste or experience emptiness as we meditate. So when we meditate, say, on the breathing, and all the 5 hindrances fade away temporarily, we attain what we call samadhi. Maybe even appana samadhi, either upajara samadhi or appana samadhi. The 5 hindrances have gone. We call that a state of emptiness, because suffering temporarily has subsided. The normal thinking, sense of self has subsided. So it's like a taste of emptiness. And that gives you a clue what you're aiming for, what is emptiness, what is not emptiness. And so obviously the opposite of emptiness is your mind is full of greed, full of anger, full of delusion, full of distraction, full of worry, full of sleepiness. Whatever it's full of is not emptiness. So the practice of samadhi gives you a taste, an idea of what emptiness is like. And then you can keep cultivating that and contemplate the suffering that comes when you fill your mind up with suffering and the causes of suffering.
Sadhu Lumpo, the next question. Dear Lumpo, some years ago I attended a Dhamma talk by Lumpo Sumedo in Thailand. During the talk, there was a big group of Sangha and lay people. I was sitting beside someone who doesn't understand English, and I did an interpretation for him during the talk. The Dhamma hall was very silent, with everyone listening to Lumpo Sumedo's talk. Hence, despite my effort to what I thought was soft whisper, became the only noise in the peaceful silent hall. A Sangha member walked down the aisle and signaled to me to keep quiet. I was very embarrassed, but I thought I should continue to translate for the fellow Dhamma brother. This incident comes up during my meditation, and I still feel very guilty and bad about it. I tried to tell myself that I meant well and that this is just a memory, but this thought keep coming up during my meditation. Should I seek for forgiveness from Lumpo Sumedo, or what should I do? Please advise me. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a good point, isn't it? Sometimes we want to do something good intention, but maybe the method or the means is not always perfect or the best. So just to avoid it, and again, if you're in a situation like that, before the retreat starts, or before the day's session starts, I'd talk to the monks or the senior monk and say, I have this friend who doesn't understand. what do you suggest is the best way to help them? Should I give them a running commentary during the session, which, as you found, probably disturbs other people? So that's, I would imagine that's why the monk came down to say stop. Or should I take notes and give them some kind of translation later? Or will the Sangha arrange some kind of translation? And that nowadays there's a lot of that going on. There's actually translations going on during retreats and talks. But the best thing is always to ask first before the problem arises. So there's good understanding, cooperation. Because misunderstanding comes, like you say, some people see you talking and they don't know whether you're just talking because you're distracted or whether you're translating or helping. They don't know. So better to clear it up ahead of time. But for you now, with your meditation, you just have to drop it. It's just one of those experiences. And we've all made those kind of mistakes before. Maybe tried to do something well or out of kindness and just did it in not the best way or not such a skillful way. So, we make mistakes even when we're trying to do something good. So just accept that. It's a learning thing. Now you've learned the lesson, you've seen the problem, you understand it. Now you can allow yourself to drop it. And no monk is going to hold a grudge against you. No one is going to hold a grudge against you because it's in the past and like you say, it was a well-intentioned act, but maybe didn't come off in the best way. So just move on and, learn a lesson. And we do that all the time through our life, through our practice. It is part of the practice, is learning lessons, moving on, letting go of the past.
Sadhu Lumpo. The next question is from NN. Lumpo, I understand that we need Kalyana Mitta to practice together, but if I do not have the group of friends to practice together, and my family members are not into Buddhism, how can I gain more strength in my practice? I seek for Lumpo kind advice.
Make more effort to find Kalyana Mitta. Get out there. Get out to the monasteries, temples, centers, join Zoom sessions, ask your questions, get your advice, carry on practicing. We have to be proactive here. We can't just sit there saying, there's no Kalyana Mitta, I can't practice. To be honest, I can say that because like so many other Western monks, I traveled 10,000 kilometers to find my Kalyana Mitta, Ajahn Chah. So, if somebody is living somewhere where there may be a temple down the road, we'll make use of it, or a Buddhist center, or nowadays we've got communications, we've got internet. There's so many avenues and opportunities now. You just make the best of what you've got. Keep looking, keep working at it. Don't give up, because there's nothing else so important as practicing the Dhamma, and Kalyana Mitta is one factor in that. As far as the people around you, if they're not interested in Dhamma, fine, just be kind to them and let go, don't worry about it, that's normal. And just get on with your own practice, and maybe one day you'll meet Kalyana Mitta as well. You just look for the opportunities. But don't make a big deal out of it, because nowadays you've got so much opportunity to hear the Dhamma, see the Dhamma, even online, that you'll manage.
Sadhu Lumpo. There's a follow-up question from WM before. If we did bad things to other people a long time ago, that thing is always staying in my mind. The fear and bitter always come and go. Should I apologize to this friend face to face, or should I confess to the Buddha?
Well, these things kind of depend on the situation, the person, what it was that you did, how serious it was. You may have to consider, is this person still around, and am I able to bring up the past event where I hurt them or did that thing? Am I able to bring it up skillfully, talk to them and apologize or not? Because sometimes we can, sometimes we can't. The very least in your mind you can. In your meditation and in your mind you can mentally apologize, seek forgiveness, seek an end to any bad feeling between you and that person. Probably the ideal would be to actually say it to their face. But if you're not able to, maybe they're not around anymore, or maybe it just, it's too difficult, then you just make the best of what you can do in that situation.
Sadhu Lumpo. Now we will invite Leong to unmute yourself.
Good evening, Long Po.
Good evening.
Earlier, Long Po explained about samatha and vipassana practice. My question is that when we practice anapanasati, is it more for samatha or vipassana practice, or this is able to combine as in both samatha and vipassana? And then my second question is that is there any kamatan or kamatana that allow a person, a practitioner to who incline more towards vipassana practice, that he use this object so that he focus more from the vipassana and then followed by samatha? It means to use vipassana to get samadhi in order to get wisdom. Thank you.
Yeah, I think there's a great opportunity for experimentation and getting to know your own character and seeing what works for you. There's no one hard and fast way about this. Obviously, if you read the Anapanasati Sutta that the Buddha taught, it's for both. It's for samatha and vipassana. And any meditation object is like that. Any meditation object, whether it's the Brahma Viharas, body contemplation, death contemplation, the breath, any of them, they're all aimed at helping you to remove distracting thoughts and the five hindrances. And as the five hindrances fade, then the mind can really look at experience in a very detached, peaceful way and really understand it better. But as you're doing that, you're not going to just suddenly remove all the five hindrances and that's it, they've gone. You're working through the five hindrances over and over again. So you've got opportunities to contemplate, say, the impermanence of thoughts and feelings from day one of your meditation practice. And you may say, I'm practicing samatha here. I'm focusing on the breath to develop jhana. But you can't help but notice thoughts arise, pass away, feelings arise, pass away as you're doing that. So really samatha and vipassana are inseparable, but you can use what you might call vipassana techniques, if you're so inclined, quite early on in your practice. So many people, they are contemplating impermanence over and over again. Excuse me. Have a runny nose today. People are contemplating impermanence. As I said, thoughts arising, passing away, and they just say, oh, another one. It's impermanent, it's uncertain, it's anicca. Whether you call that samatha or vipassana, I really don't think you need to worry too much about the labels. It's more about the results. What's happening in your mind? How is your mind progressing? And if you find a more wisdom-orientated practice helps and is successful for you, good. If you find an approach where you're just focusing on one object over and over again and that works for you, good. But in the end, we need the insight into the three characteristics directed to these five khandhas, this body and mind. Whatever way you can achieve that, you learn from your experience and do it a lot. Most people do it a bit, but not a lot. Because we only do it a bit, we don't really get that deep into the practice.